to the office?
Yes, I sent that to you last week, the day after you had emailed me and said, did you send the application in? I emailed it back to you. And beneath the application was the bio, which I had sent to you the day before.
Oh, okay. So you didn't, all right. So Ebenezer was not on, oh no, and Ebenezer, so therefore was on copy for that?
He was uncopied for that.
Okay. All right. So I will dig that out because I plucked out the bio and didn't realize the application was an attachment. Obviously, we have the petition and the petition comments we do have, but I haven't circulated those. So if you just want to speak to those, and I can
Sure.
always push that
Yeah.
stuff out to the committee as we go along.
Yes, we had scores of signatures, both hard copy, which were submitted on March 17th to Debbie via email. And early last week, Monday of last week, a online petition signed by many community residents, among scores of others. 1,196 people signed the online petition to go along with the hard copy signatures that were obtained by Ned Klein, Dana Hockenberry, and Dave Crenshaw, all three of whom are on this call this evening with us. We also have a couple of folks who, if Chair permits, would like to speak, including Judge Milton Tingling, Judge Shaw Alley, our former chairperson of Community Board 12, and Graham Cerullo. Graham, by the way, was instrumental some 3.5 years ago when Coogan's faced a rent fight and got 15,000 signatures at that time to stave off any elimination, and did a robust job along with scores of community residents groups, Borough President Gail Brewer, Congressman Espaillat, and Lin-Manuel Miranda and his father Luis, who were champions in the Save Coogan's back in the period of December 2017, January 2018 timeframe. Coogan's needs no introduction, as you said. I think you've circulated that prose, that resolution that I think is a concise resume of what Coogan's is and has been for over 35 years in this community. It is not only a place that had strong community buy-in and support from the day it opened in Halloween 1985 until it shuttered in April of last year, but it was a key contributor to all aspects of community life, from political, community, introducing us to a wide range of the world, from roadrunners from around the United States and the entire world, to its relationship with Columbia University and New York Presbyterian, the community board, all of the neighborhood groups who benefited. I can think of three in particular who come to mind. Number one, Columbia's Institute of Health and the HIV program, which Coogan's was a strong supporter of from the inception in the late 1980s, to its work annually with the Northern Manhattan Improvement Corporation and its Brides March, and to combat domestic violence. Its work with Dave Crenshaw, his Uptown Team Dreamers, and of course, Hike the Heights for the past 18 years, going back to its inception. And Hike the Heights, of course, and the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance Uptown Art Stroll, which is of the same age, 19 years this June. Coogan's was a staunch supporter and contributor in many aspects to those and scores of other community groups, organizations, and pro-neighborhood efforts. I can't think of enough great things to say about Peter Walsh, Dave Hunt, and Tess McDade O'Connor. And of course, also in that prose, that resolution which you wrote up, you'll see that for the many who worked at Coogan's over the past 35 years, they entered almost every profession of life, from doctors to nurses, firefighters, police, surgeons, CEOs, community board chairs. They were everything. It was a cornucopia of talents that Coogan's embraced from the ground up for the past 35 years. And I think we have a great deal to recognize when we look at co-naming that corner and the importance of Coogan's to the life of not only Washington Heights and Northern Manhattan, but to the entire city of New York.
Thank you, Martin. Who do you want to have speaking next? Just because Chanel will help us unmute people that aren't already panelists as needed.
Judge Milton Tingling, Judge Shaw Alley, in that order.
Okay. Chanel, can you bring up the judges?
He may be just listed as Milton Tingling. There he is.
There we go.
All right. All right. Just let me know when to start.
You go right ahead.
All right. Well, first of all, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me, Martin. Thank you for the invitation. I'll make it quick. You know, Martin summed up so much of it. So, first of all, let me say that I truly love Dave, Peter, and Tess, and that is personal. But that's not the reason that I'm here tonight. My family moved to Washington Heights in 1956. My family still lives in the same building, the same apartment that we moved into in 1956. When we moved here, I would say that Washington Heights was predominantly majority Jewish. There were Irish uptown, there were Italians, there were synagogues everywhere, all up and down Fort Washington Avenue. My building, things were different. And over the years, we saw more African Americans move in. And then over the years, Washington Heights became synonymous with being the second capital of the Dominican Republic. And I bring this up for those that have been here and those that have moved in recently. Because from the time that Coogan's opened up, Coogan's represented all of the things that Washington Heights was, what it became, all of the transitions, and everything that makes Washington Heights a shared community. I was honored to be the first African American ever elected to a judgeship from Washington Heights. My campaign began and ran through Coogan's. Dave Hunt personally took me by the hand to walk me into areas that when I was a child, I would never go into for fear of not coming out. Over the years, I've performed weddings at Coogan's. I've celebrated at Coogan's. I've celebrated my children's birthdays. I've celebrated my daughter's election to a judgeship from Washington Heights. What I really wanted to say about the naming of the street in terms of Coogan's, and of course, anybody that ever went to Coogan's, it was home. Did you ever leave there without getting Dave's singular blessing? May you live in interesting times. What I wanted to say about naming the street is that you shouldn't name the street because of Dave and Peter and Tess. You should rename it Coogan's Way for one simple reason. No matter who you were, what you were, no matter where you came from, no matter why you were there, when you were in Coogan's, you were home. All of the things that I talked about with Washington Heights was when we moved here, and what Washington Heights has transitioned into, and whatever Washington Heights will become. Coogan's was Washington Heights, and Washington Heights was simply Coogan's. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we pass to former CB12 chair Shah Ali and now Judge Ali, I neglected actually to introduce the committee members who are here tonight. So if I can just list who's here from the Traffic and Transportation Committee is Robin Cruz, Mary Anderson, Leo Jimenez, Jay Mazer, Jim Berlin, Gerard Dangle, Bruce Robertson, and Richard Allman. And I still feel like a chair for Edith. Just doesn't seem quite right that somebody so present is not present. But with that, let's get back to
Madam Chair, could you tell us what the time limit for speakers is?
Oh yeah, sorry. And
Thank you.
I know I'm like being a little casual tonight. If we could keep the presentations to 3 minutes on this matter, that would be great. For those that are presenting on behalf.
Might I just also, in memory of Edith, just remind everyone of one of the most powerful things she always said. She would say to all of us, "We are the temporarily able." That was very powerful. And I believe Edith will stay with us and we must keep her with us.
Thank you, Jim. I never heard her, I never got that one. So I'm glad to know it. Let's see. Shaw, are you?
If Shaw is not here, you might want to reach out to Dana and to Graham Cirolo, who I believe are both on the call.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm just doing a scan. Chanel, can you bring up Dana Hockenberry and Graham Cirolo? Okay, and when,
And if we have time, Dave Crenshaw is here. That should conclude our remarks.
okay, great. Dana, hi.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have no makeup on. I didn't realize that I'd be welcomed in to support the Coogan's way in the neighborhood. So I'm a little off guard and apologies. I would have put on some eye makeup. But nonetheless, I'm here to fully support Coogan's being, these wonderful, wonderful people that have been working in our neighborhood since 1985 and making it a better neighborhood, a place where we could join as a neighborhood with different ethnic groups, and everyone got along and hung together. And most importantly, I remember, and I speak on behalf of Obi Bing, certainly, who's not here tonight to speak about that, and he would be much more elegant in that conversation. But after Obi passed, I became very much more involved to carry his torch in his political movement and in energy and involvement. And Coogan's always had the back room, the private room, that had this level of mystery to me. Like, it was always the back room. And that was where the politics happened. The real political movements happened that were so important to the neighborhood. Going back to who was it that we always, but it was always the back room where politics happened and where movement of a neighborhood was happening and digesting and talking and moving it forward. So it's super important that Coogan's way be named, but it's also super important that there's another place in the neighborhood that will have this level of activism, of importance, of roots, of camaraderie, of of everyone coming together. So that's where I am. That's what I feel. And so thank you for the time. And you can feel my passion and everyone else's passion. And next time I do this, I'll know to wear mascara.
You look great. Thank you,
But no,
Dana,
thank
so
you, thank
much.
you.
And a place of importance. I'm going to hold that onto that phrase. Graham, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for being here.
I'm really honored to be here, actually. And how do I follow up after Dana? More or less to just agree with her. I'm honored to just be invited and to be able to speak on about this. And I know it's you know, this is a little bit of a celebration already. I just want to say that some of my fondest memories of Coogan's is actually meeting Obi Bing there, and having drinks with Obi, and hearing about infrastructure, lots of infrastructure. So I learned to map all of the. I know every pipe and everything underneath because of sitting with Obi at Coogan's. You know, as was mentioned before, we you know, when an unnamed entity that owns the building was you know, looking to redo that space, you know, the community really stepped up. I remember you know, some people were saying, oh, you know, this is inevitable. So I started a petition. I never thought we'd get, I mean, the amount of signatures, watching those roll in was truly amazing. And where it was coming from, I mean, it was people who had been to medical school, people in the Dominican Republic, people in all parts of the world that knew Coogan's, and they were all sharing their stories and I'm just watching this. And I mean, I went to sleep. This happened over maybe a day or two. And I woke up and there were thousands of more signatures and all these stories. And it was just one of the most amazing things. And I'm honored to have been part of it. I miss Coogan's terribly. You know, the kinds of Irish pubs are becoming an endangered species. And, you know, and that's really, really upsetting. And Coogan's was the finest. You know, Dave and Peter and Tess, you know, thank you for, you know, creating such a wonderful place. And, you know, it's good to see you and I hope you're doing well. And I'll leave it at that. But yes, please, Coogan's Way. This is what we need.
Thank you, Graham. And just so that's it from in terms of the presentations, right? I'm sorry, I think there's a certain, I don't know if it's irony or it's sort of perfect that in the background, there's a lot of noise behind me, and that is hamburgers on a grill pan in a galley kitchen, and my fire alarm just went off, and my husband's trying to get food on the table for my daughter, and I'm like, this is what happens when we don't have Coogan's. We're trying to do this all in our little kitchen, and it's not going well tonight. Anyway, I do have, I guess, two quick questions that I'd like to start off. And if anybody from the committee, you know, has anything, please do raise your hand. One is and I don't know if this is Graham or Martin, and I know Martin, you said it, if you can, just to make sure that we've got it in the notes, describe how many petition signatures there were, both in real life and you know, in digital life, part one. And part two is on the pros that you shared with us, one thing that wasn't there was the activities under the banner, I think of under the banner of Coogan's, but I know was probably Dave and Peter and Tess. Once the closure had been announced and helping feed people who needed some help in the darkest few months of the pandemic, and that wasn't in there. So I started to draft something, but just if you, is there some reason why you decided to just kind of stop it at that moment, that, you know, not go into the sort of post-closure announcement life of Coogan's?
John Michelle, the New Yorker writer who's doing a biography on Coogan's, he was the lion's share of the pros for the petition and for the online petition as well. And I think the best source of that information, the give back that Coogan's helped later last fall, September, October, November, that was so valuable to small businesses. And I think back to the New York One story where some of the owners of restaurants along the Broadway corridor in the Heights and in Inwood were featured and saying if it wasn't for this United Way Coogan's partnership that we would not be able to pay our employees. And I'm going to let Dave and Peter speak to that in just a moment. And the second part is the fact that upon their closure last April, they were able to meet payroll one last time. And that was a piece that was on the news, I believe also on New York One, Channel 2 as well. They were able to turn product back and return product and turned that revenue that they were able to receive for the return product into payroll for the final month, April of last year, for all employees. I'm going to let Peter and Dave answer that two-part question in just a second after I give you those numbers again. As of March 17th, we had received some 150 plus petition hard copy signatures that were emblazoned from business owners and from buildings within the 2-block stretch north, south, east, and west of 169th Street and Broadway. And as of last Monday, when I emailed you the PDF of the online petitions, there were 56 pages of signatures, totaling 1,196 online petition signatures, and some 8 pages of comments from people who took the time beyond signing the petition to also provide us with remarks about Coogan's and what Coogan's meant to them in their support and decision to sign as part of the 1,196 online petition signatures. So now I'm going to turn it over to Peter and Dave, who's going to get back to you with regards to the post-closure work on those 2 items I just mentioned.
Thank you.
Peter, you want to take this? Peter doesn't have a audio on. So in answer to that, I want to say that one shout out that has to go is to Anheuser-Busch. They were the first vendor that I called. They agreed immediately to come in and remember, we closed on March 16th. We were packed with food goods and beverage goods for St. Patrick's Day, our biggest day of the year. Every inch of Coogan's was filled with product, which we would have had to pay for. So Anheuser-Busch actually led the way. And then I was able to call the second vendor and said, this is what Anheuser-Busch is doing. Can you do the same? And every single vendor stepped up to the plate. Whatever was reusable for them, they took back. They refunded what we owed them. And of course, we were able to turn that into the final payroll. And that worked very, very well. Then we raised, I think it was $122,000, which was distributed in October through Facebook, through United Way, and through generosity of our own customers and contacts. And so many, I think 22 businesses or 24 businesses in Washington Heights and Inwood got grants of $5,000. This was not a loan. This was just a grant to help them keep going. And we were very appreciative of all of that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
You want me to jump in?
Sure.
First, it's Peter Walsh. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. You guys always show up, end your meetings very late at night. I hope you don't have to do that tonight. But and we can't say meet us at Coogan's after your meeting, so that's sad. But I'm looking at some of the faces I'm looking at, and I see Richard and James and Berlin and Bruce and his wife and Graham and I know David was the same way. I got very moist in my eyes hearing some of the words about Coogan's. And Martin, what you did, and you brought this up, and with Dana, Graham, and of course Dave Crenshaw, who these are not just, they weren't customers, these are friends. So we appreciate it. But thank God you're not naming this McDade Hunt Walsh Street. That I couldn't even be here and accept. But when you say Coogan's, it transcends us. It's not us anymore. We look at Coogan's the same way you look at Coogan's, as an outsider and to say, looking in. It was something that happened, and it was the patrons. That it really was the patrons that made Coogan's what it was. They taught us every day. Their needs became our wants. Their desires became our aspirations. their organizations became our vehicles to find the purpose in our own lives. We watch people every day that could easily have gone home and gone to sleep and gone to bed, but they socialized, they met, they contacted, they imagined things, and then they took their imagination and they made it work. And that's the neighborhood of Washington Heights. There's nothing like it in New York City. There's just nothing I've seen. I'm a born New Yorker. My children are fourth generation New Yorkers. There is nothing like Washington Heights. The mix, the music, is something in the vibration up there where you can have a museum, which is the greatest medieval museum probably in the Western Hemisphere, and at the same time have the best bodega that would sell you a Lucy if you needed it and didn't have the money. It's just a crazy neighborhood, and it's wonderful in that craziness. So I just want to thank everybody. I'm glad you're talking about Coogan's Way, and because, as I said, it's something that has become our way in our lives. Milton, your words, I wish my children were here when you were speaking. The same with you, Martin. Thank you. I am very humbled, and we are humbled about this, believe us. We're just representing what took place inside, and what took place inside was bigger than us.
Thank you, Peter. We have just, I see one hand up in the attendee list. Chanel Raul Kana. Did you want to say something, Raul?
Buildings much smaller in size. They'll support.
Chanel, can we get Raul or no?
Yeah, he's able to speak. He just needs to unmute.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll come back. Liz Ritter. Hey, Liz.
Hello, thank you so much. No, I just wanted to make sure that, well, first of all, can you see my shirt? I just wanted to make sure that I was able to vote as a non-committee board member, and, you know.
Yeah,
props
no,
to-
absolutely.
Props to everything that everybody else said, and thank you, Dave and Peter, for employing my kids and teaching my son how to pour a proper pint. I will also say that I was in your bar when you opened, and I was there the last day you closed, and that was the last shot of anything I drank, so.
If I may
Pardon?
quickly, Raul's two questions to you are about the next item on the City Bike Station locations.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Martin. All right, so with that, do I have from the, actually, let me just go over with the committee what they have hopefully now in front of them that I would have circulated just at like 5 after 7 with the resolution. And I would, so I'll be looking for a motion for a resolution on the co-naming of Coogan's Way. And I will say that the only thing that I would like to consider added is the small business grant effort in the last payroll, and good as an employer and continue to support the community post closure. So I would add that in the whereases, but other than that, largely what you see here, covering much of Martin's presentation and the many things brought up by the other presenters. Do I have a motion on the committee?
I would like to move that we adopt the resolution pretty much as you described it, including the additions, which I think further demonstrate the the power that Coogan's still has in some way, and hopefully it will stay in the neighborhood. That's what I would like to do. Yes.
All right. I saw a 2 being held up by Richard Allman as well as hands by Mary and Bruce. So I will consider this seconded by Richard. And I think, can I
Debbie,
just,
is there
I
a
have a
moment to
question.
comment briefly for committee members also to comment?
sure, but briefly, and then we are going to vote.
It's got to be brief because everything's been said. I just share from the heart. I grew up with a family business. It was a neighborhood crossroads, a meeting place that tried to live up to those values of everybody welcome here. And for Coogan's, that's an understatement. It's nice to be here tonight.
Debbie, is it possible to add in, since I'm not looking at the reso, but it wasn't explicitly mentioned here that the 5K race is
Yeah.
in the reso as well. And also after Coogan's closed, in addition to the fundraiser that they had that materially supported 24 businesses, they also donated a significant amount of the food that they weren't able to give back to their vendors or to their employees, to local
Various-
senior
yeah,
centers. Who
that's
then
what I was getting
donated
at
the meals.
before. Yeah, definitely.
An extra thanks from senior centers. Thanks, Liz, for bringing that up.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets in.
I just want to second Liz's friendly amendments.
Thank you, Bruce. And what I'll do is I will circulate to the committee, obviously, another go around on what you circulated, so make sure that everything got in there that we discussed. So just to do a quick roll call, Robin Cruz,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Gerard,
Absolutely, yes.
Bruce,
Absolutely honored. Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Board members?
I'm getting there. Hold on. Okay, so now from CB12, Liz,
Yes.
Steve Simon. Steve, are you still hanging around?
I don't see him on the list.
Yeah, no, he was here. Okay, all right. I guess. Oh no, he's here. I think.
Unmute.
Yeah, can you
Unmute.
*6, Steve, if you're on the phone? I'm not sure.
He's looking for someplace to have dinner.
All right. All right. So with that, a resolution for the co-naming of Coogan's Way at the corner of 169th and Broadway has unanimously passed committee, as
Thank
well
you.
as our board member present. Thank you so much. It's obviously in these times where, I mean, this was a happy, sad, but we loved getting to think about you guys and hear about you guys just for another night tonight. And as a
Just voted in
practical,
the chat. He can't access his audio.
all right. Well, he'll have a chance to vote on it again. So this will get voted on in June
Can I
by
call
the
him?
City Council.
If I call him and he says yes, is that a vote?
Yes,
Sure,
it has to be
sure.
audible.
I think, Debbie, if I may, the next stop after the committee is the April 27th general meeting of the community board. And then on to the council for
Yes.
ratification.
True.
Batch of bills at council in June.
No, we're just gonna railroad this through. just see if he comes up.
We need your audio. Hold on.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you,
Hey,
Bruce.
Steve. Go have dinner. Good luck.
Like finding it.
I never knew Steve Simon could be muted before.
You taught us, Peter.
So, all right. Thanks again, Dave, Peter, Taz, Martin, Graham, Judge Tingling, Dana. Did I say Graham?
Thank you, everybody, too.
Participated. All right.
Tess and ourselves. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the work you do. And it's thankless sometimes. I mean, you guys are somewhere where nobody else is. We appreciate it. We always have. Thank you.
All right. Take good care.
Well,
All right. So I actually have a sort of, I think it's got a little new business and a little old business all wrapped into one. And I asked Dave Tom to join us tonight. And Chanel, actually, if you can promote Dave at this time, because he may want to do a screen share. So just sort of apropos of the bicycling infrastructure conversation that we had last month, there was one thing that sort of got mentioned, but Parks actually got the presentation, but not us. And that had to do with a specific idea that is sort of interesting, and sort of has a radical, but yet it has a simplicity too. So I asked Dave to come and present to our committee, because it would, in the first instance, involve, well, I'll let him speak to it, but it involves state DOT, which obviously isn't so much on our purview, but it does actually have a nexus to city DOT. And I think we have Lyle Blackwood here tonight with us from DOT. And actually, Chanel, why don't you bring Lyle forward as well? But actually, why don't I do the talking afterwards? So with that, I thank Dave for being willing to come again tonight. Again, I know he's already presented this at Parks for a different reason that went through Parks, but for letting this committee have the benefit of the presentation as well.
He has not presented this to Parks.
Oh wait, I'm sorry.
It's been discussed topically in Parks, but it has not been
the full
presented to
presentation.
Parks.
All right.
Because it's fundamentally a transpo thing, which is why.
Right. It just got, okay, I get it. I'm all caught up now. So
No worries.
all to the good, all to the good. So Dave, if you want to, I don't know if you want it, well, first of all, unmute. Next of all, if you want to share screen, have at it.
Yeah, if my microphone's working okay, is
Yep.
that?
Oh, there you are. Perfect.
And
Peter
then
Isabel.
sharing, let's see. Yeah, this will work. Okay, see if that worked. So yes, Liz is quite correct. This hasn't been talked at all at Parks, but this came out of the Parks Committee meeting where the project was discussed, and following that, a couple Inwood residents were talking to me about it, and we put together this as a sort of summation of a couple different ideas that have kicked around for a while, but it seems that a number of factors might be coming together to make it a practical possibility, potentially, for this specific project as the catalyst. So it's easiest for me to just explain this with images, so that's what I'll do, and then we can have lots of Q&A afterwards. So the point is that there's a project involving repairing the retaining walls on the northbound lanes of the Henry Hudson Parkway, which is where the existing greenway is, north of the George Washington Bridge. It follows the old Riverside Drive on what was once the sidewalk and is now considered the greenway. And so when that retaining wall project happens and they have to do the necessary work, which you can see it when you go by, the walls are practically falling over as it is. It's this nice gentle cant to them, then it will close that segment of the greenway. And because there aren't a lot of connection points, it's going to close a significant section, probably from the bridge to, in 181st Street area up to Dykeman Street, because there really aren't many ways to get on between 181st and Dykeman. And so, that's a pretty big problem for the greenway, because that is the main route on the west side. And it's also the connection further onto the Empire State Trail, which I'll talk about in a moment. And it is the main way in and out via the greenway that's continuous below 155th, because on the east side, the greenway stops at 155th. So there's a definite need for a temporary alternative, and it's hard to think how they're going to make one. I mean, certainly I'm sure DOT and Parks will come back with some detour that involves on-street signage, maybe on St. Nicholas or Fort George Hill or something. But it's really not the same level of standard as the greenway, which is of course a protected bike route that's very safe from vehicle traffic. So, I don't have the exact numbers on this segment of the greenway, but suffice to say, it's a very well-used route. It's multifunction. You see people out there walking and biking and everything. And Upper Manhattan in general is pretty low in terms of the infrastructure of New York for high quality bike routes. So we don't have the redundancy to create easy detours when something like this has to be repaired. And as I said, on the east side, the greenway stops at 155th Street and dumps you out onto St. Nicholas, which is just on-street painted lanes. It's doable if you're a hardened biker. I do it sometimes to commute to work, but it's not really suitable for greenway traffic. And this is a map of the Manhattan bike map. Upper Manhattan's on the left, Lower Manhattan's on the right. And I've shaded this to only show the protected routes, because they really are a different class of service than the on-street bike lanes, which frequently are double parked and or Sharrow streets, which you're navigating around cars. And you can see in orange the area where the closure is, which is that only connection in this long green connection going downtown. And you see here on the east side how the greenway just stops on 155th, and you're in this kind of netherworld that's a little hard to get back to a usable connection. So one of the factors that might help with this proposal that you'll be seeing is that as of last year, we now have the new Empire State Trail, where the state cobbled together a whole bunch of existing routes and filled in some connections and added a lot of signage. And theoretically, you can now bike to Canada, two parts of Canada. You can go straight north up near north of the Adirondacks, or you can turn left at Albany and keep going till you hit Buffalo. And so this is New York's connection to the Empire State Trail. Without the greenway, with the greenway severed, you can't get there. And it's already bad as it is, because one of the few spots in the Empire State Trail that is on road with very poor infrastructure is the 3-mile link from Dykeman up into Van Cortlandt Park. So this would really further extend an already difficult section. And here you see the map of the Empire State Trail. So without if we were at a distant point in the future where, and who knows, maybe all this infrastructure money that'll be flowing will help with this sort of thing. But at the moment, we don't have the water level route that would be the natural extension of the greenway along the water level and avoid having to climb up and down a few hundred feet of elevation. And that's the greenway connector that one day we hope to see built next to the Amtrak tracks along the Hudson River, so that you can just go straight north from the Little Red Lighthouse and connect into the existing 1.5 mile long path that's south of Dykeman Street at water level. So since we don't have this yet, and since this project we're told is going to happen sometime in 2021, this isn't, we can't wait that long to get to this before they repair the retaining walls. So one idea that and it is a little crazy, but it's not quite as crazy as it sounds, as you'll see, is to try to maintain the connection by taking a lane from the Henry Hudson Parkway, which could be done using cost-efficient Jersey barriers. It could use a setup that's been used quite a few times before, and it would be quite functional because the existing greenway has several pinch points that are very tight. So even without the retaining wall issue, there are some issues with the existing setup. So just some backstory here. The Henry Hudson was originally Riverside Drive. The northbound lanes were Riverside Drive. That's why when you get to Inwood and you exit onto Riverside Drive, there's this little isolated piece that's the last remnant of what was Riverside Drive from Inwood going back down to Washington Heights and below. And so the Riverside Drive roadbed became the northbound lanes. And after the Henry Hudson Parkway was built and after the bridge was built, a new southbound right-of-way was built for the southbound lanes. And so what you see here in the picture on the left is today the northbound lanes, and there you see that structure that everyone goes by with the little lookout that was originally just off the sidewalk of Riverside Drive. And here you see on the right side Inwood Hill Park, and you can see how they've begun clearing the path to add the new right-of-way in Riverside Park, because the first one built was actually what is today the southbound lanes, originally shared both northbound and southbound when the bridge was one level. And when they added the second level to the bridge, they added a second cut through the park. And that'll be important in a moment. So, Robert Moses, we've all read The Power Broker, great book, lots of fun history in there about roadway design in New York. But the Henry Hudson Parkway isn't really doing today what it was designed to do. Today, the major traffic comes over the bridge and it takes Sedegan if it's going north. The Henry Hudson Parkway is a little over-designed in this particular section for what it's actually doing. So because it's a toll bridge and because it's also pinched as it goes through Riverdale, the Henry Hudson Parkway is already only 2 lanes. When you come north and the exit happens to the George Washington Bridge, there's only 2 lanes that continue north for a short distance. And then it becomes 3 lanes, and then it becomes 2 lanes again once you get to Riverdale. So there's the segment where we need the detour is the exact segment where the highway goes from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. And unless you truly believe, and I'll show you in a minute that the math, in fact, proves this not to be the case, an insane number of cars that just happen to want to go from the George Washington Bridge to Capick Street, it's over-designed. And in fact, in practice, when you think about it, when you're driving north on that highway, it's really 1 lane because the middle lane usually backs up for the bridge also. So everyone already squeezes to the left already. When you look at another factor that makes this easier to do now, the toll bridge or the toll plaza is gone. And when the toll plaza was there might have been a little bit more of an argument of using that 3rd lane for queuing space, even if it wasn't necessarily being used for travel. But since the e-tolls are now here, that's really evaporated. So here's a picture showing the former Riverside Drive, now the northbound lanes. You can see how unbelievably wide this is for the northbound traffic. And the cars already are used to not having a shoulder. There's no shoulder on the left side. There's just a Jersey barrier, which is what's protecting the existing sidewalk or the existing greenway from the northbound traffic. And the best precedent for this is if you go to Harlem River Driveway, which is this funny name for what was once the end of Harlem River Drive before it was extended south to connect to FDR Drive. If you go from 155th and St. Nicholas up to Harlem River Drive, that road segment has exactly what we're talking about. It was somewhat over-designed, and sometime about 15, 20 years ago, the Jersey barriers were put down and they claimed a lane from it, and it became a 2-way bikeway that ties into the Greenway on the East River. And that's there today. It's worked very well over the years, and it was just a matter of putting down the barriers and restriping the roadway, and that was that. So it's been done before in the city. It's also been done recently on state highways. This is New York 100, which last year put in this section as part of the Empire State Trail improvement work to fill in a gap on the North County Trailway, where they put in this barrier, in this case, a permanent barrier, between this fast-moving 50-mile-an-hour highway traffic and the bikeway in the right-of-way. And then this is a picture I took yesterday on what is the extension of the Henry Hudson Parkway, which is the Sawmill Parkway as you go north. This is a construction detour up by Ardsley Avenue where they're building a bridge, and so they temporarily have created a short detour section around the construction site where they just have some Jersey barriers protecting the trailway from the fast-moving traffic. So it seems like it's something that's in the toolkit that's out there. And if you look at the way the geometry works and the geography works, it's very logical because the left lane, the westernmost lane of those northbound lanes, is exactly parallel to the pathway and the retaining wall. So you see here on the left, the retaining wall that's going to be repaired and worked on. And so this lane is immediately adjacent to that. It would be nothing more than making a small opening wherever you're starting the detour and wherever you're ending it to get on and off the existing greenway. And so ideally it would look something like this, where the Jersey barriers go down, the roadway continues with 2 travel lanes, and the two-way bikeway / pedestrian route takes over temporarily the left travel lane, which I should point out would also, by giving the road a road diet, potentially contribute to reducing speeding, because speeding often happens when you have an over-designed road and there's lots of open space for someone to hit the gas pedal. So trying this as a temporary pilot now during the construction detour, which is the rationale for it, it might work in such a way that it doesn't even have any negative impact on the roadway, and it could potentially become a permanent improvement. There's no reason why the bikeway shouldn't be a wider, smoother experience than what's there today. And while doing anything involving a state road is very complex, I think we've all learned in New York since the Sadiq Khan's time that doing pilots is a great way to test out ideas and see if they work. So if it does work, and if the pilot project does show that there's no significant negative traffic impact, you also have the potential here to do something very interesting, which is expand further into the Bronx and provide a long missing connection. And that's something that really enhances an improvement over the current route. So currently, if you want to go to the Bronx, you have to travel deep into Inwood Hill Park, where it's not even clear that bikes are even allowed. And you have to wind your way up these steep, isolated hills and go through a couple staircases. Eventually, you find yourself on a 3-foot wide, very negative space on the lower level of the bridge that, again, has stairs at the other end. And there's even signs saying you're supposed to walk your bike. You're not even supposed to ride across it. And this was not improved during the $86 million that they just spent, doing all that work on the bridge. So even getting to that is difficult, because never mind the bridge, you've got to get over the Amtrak tracks in Inwood Hill Park. You've got to go up these crazy steep hills. It's not really anything that people would do if they could find another way around it. And if you look at the actual traffic data on the bridge, these are numbers I pulled from what I could find, which was 2016, but it appears that the peak northbound traffic at rush hour was about 2,800 vehicles per hour over the bridge northbound. Now, for a 50-mile-an-hour road, 2 lanes is a capacity of 4,000 vehicles per hour, as any engineering road design manual will tell you. 3 lanes is 6,000. So even losing a lane, 4,000 is a much bigger number than 2,800. And even if something's wrong in my math here, I think the numbers can be shown, if the state were to look at it, that there is capacity to do something like this without any negative impact on the traffic. And then what that does is gives you a straight route. So you start down at 181st Street, and then you just travel straight through. You don't get off at Dykeman through the triple switchback ramp and then through Inwood Hill Park and back up a hill onto a 3-foot wide passageway that you're supposed to dismount on. You would actually just carry straight through all the way into the Bronx. And then once you get to Capic, who knows what future things the Bronx Bike Infrastructure Network could then connect into using this as a catalyst. So the idea is that all these things might be coming into play where you have a need for a detour during the repair, because it's very unlikely that a detour can be found that is going to have the kind of functionality of the Greenway. You would improve the connection for the Empire State Trail today, and you would have a potential real piece of infrastructure for the Bronx tomorrow, all tested out to see if it works against actual traffic during construction. And there even could be a benefit for this road diet where the endless speeding that we know is a problem on the Henry Hudson Parkway might be somewhat mitigated by having 2 lanes that are more suitable to the traffic that actually happens. So that's really the gist of it. Obviously, you're talking about a New York State highway through New York City land that happens to also run through a park, and it's unbelievably messy and complicated with the agencies. And it's going to be somewhat difficult to get them to not want to just say, this is not my issue, as has already been the case, where there was a article in the Daily News about this, and the quote from the Daily News was, let me see if I can share to this, sorry. And the quote from the Daily, can everyone see that? Yep. The quote from the Daily News was from a park spokesman, was that, and here's a reference to the idea of using a lane of the state highway, but the park spokesman said that idea was off the table. So I'm not sure what the rationale is for that, but clearly this is a complex interagency proposal, and it would require some real cooperation and advocacy from residents and community boards and everyone else to get them to not dismiss it immediately. But I do think as an engineer that the math could support it, and there seems to be a lot of logic to doing something like this at this point in time.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you for that. So I'll say to the committee that I had an interest in this because, so I will say, you know, I interpret the negative comment in the article to indicate it's not an option in terms of parks' involvement in trying to find an alternate, so that whatever they're thinking in terms of an alternate while the greenway is closed for bicyclists between Dykeman and roughly 181st, that this isn't an option. And I wanted Dave to come here today because I think that, you know, one of the biggest things that we hear, and I hear in other settings about the bike infrastructure, is how perilous the Manhattan Bronx connectors are. Either perilous, as in the case, yeah, or just like not really workable. So when you just saw the flight of stairs that one would have to do if you picked your way through Inwood Hill Park and to get over the Amtrak bridge, and you still have to then go in kind of a, I mean, not for everybody kind of pathway between that bridge up the flights of stairs where you've carried your bike and getting up to the Henry Hudson Bridge. It's not, you know, it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for casual riders. It's really not for anybody but the most intrepid. And it doesn't seem like, as far as I know, that there is possibility or feasibility to make that bridge over the Amtrak tracks accessible. And so to me, this is sort of a low cost, right, that bridge. I don't think that bridge can become accessible is how I understand it. And knowing that any water level connector is tens and tens and tens and tens, and Liz, I know you've got information on that, but it's tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars away. And it's not clear who's got the appetite or the, you know, on the timing. And that's, so this sort of seems like a low cost potential solution, which to me, I think of it in the other way, that has a nice little spillover to addressing the Greenway problem. And that, to Dave's point, you could do as a pilot, but more importantly, could be an interesting connector to at least get people over the Henry Hudson Bridge, again, as limited as that is with a 3-foot width, as opposed to taking your chances on the Broadway Bridge and coming out into, you know, Broadway and Kingsbridge, which is probably one of the worst parts of the connectors to the trail. You know, besides, I guess, Seaman, would you say, Dave? So, and I guess the other thing is, like, we are the community board. We don't have a nexus to the state, New York State DOT. However, and this is something, Lyle, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm not sure you can actually answer this one, but DOT, I guess my question for DOT is, DOT does have some operational responsibilities on the Henry Hudson Parkway. Isn't that right? Like in that section of the roadway that's sort of like you run it and they own it kind of thing?
It depends. Ideally, it's in conjunction with the state. The Henry Hudson is a little tricky as far as official jurisdiction, especially in that area, pretty much from 158th North. So we would have to get some clarification from the state as to what specifically is ours, what specifically is theirs. But I'm sure we could work together, depending on the situation. But we definitely have to work with the state in order to do anything in regards to this area, if we were to move forward.
Right, understanding that, but doing things in conjunction is a lot better to me in terms of a foothold for the community board potentially, because we can ask you to do what you can to kind of open up a discussion. Because I will say that, for projects to get government funding, the project needs to exist at that government entity. So right now, this project does not exist at DOT New York City. It does not exist at DOT New York State. And that means it makes it hard for anybody to even start assembling support from a financial perspective because it doesn't exist yet. So I guess that's why I wanted Dave to come, because I feel like, is there a small first step that we can take as a community board? Again, that first step to what we can control, which is making a request to DOT to start to sort of consider it and open up a conversation. Jim, I'm going to you, Jim Berlin.
Right, now I had to turn on my video and I had to turn on my audio. Right, now I think in terms of the practicalities, the first thing we would have to do, or someone would have to do, is actually verify, Dave's presumptions that in fact there is this excess capacity on the parkway. Now, the other thing, the main reason I wanted to mention anything is during the collapse and subsequent reconstruction of the Castle Village Wall, which I'm very familiar with since I live there, the Henry Hudson Parkway was 2 lanes, and it came up along the way that it worked just fine, sort of like Dave was mentioning, as 2 lanes, and I believe it was state DOT, but I don't really know, and we could look into it. Some DOT was absolutely insistent that this be returned to 3 lanes. And in fact, I believe there's a bottleneck south of Castle Village, sort of south of 181st Street. There is a lot of traffic that somehow wants to, and maybe they don't want to all go to Kapok Street and Dyckman Street, but there is an awful lot of traffic. So again, that's just the situation as it was, and that is a reality that I wanted everyone to be aware of. Thank you.
All right. Next, I have, if nobody else from the committee, I have Liz and then we'll go to the attendee list. Liz, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, a couple of things in no particular order. First, thanks, Dave, for a really coherent, easy to follow presentation. And thank you also for using your PowerPoint slides as a guide to your presentation rather than just reading the content of the slides, which is a personal pet peeve of mine with PowerPoint presentations. This, I think, really effectively lays out all of the many reasons why this could really be a good idea and makes a very certain kind of sense. It's true that we are a New York City community board, and for the most part, the things that we call on agencies to do, we're reaching out to New York City agencies. But we send resolutions to the state all the time. We call on the state legislature to pass different kinds of laws or to take legislative action. We send things occasionally to the governor. We ask Congress to do things. It's mostly the city, but there are plenty of times when it's within our purview to as an advisory body to advise state agencies that have purview over the things in our community, whether it's Riverbank State Park or New York State DOT and a piece of this roadway. We deal with the Port Authority, for example. So the fact that it's state DOT doesn't mean that we can't, as a community board, weigh in with our advisory opinion. I think that part of what happened with the return to 2 lanes, as Jim pointed out after the collapse, was it used to be 3 lanes. It has to go back to 3 lanes. It was a very, like, when your mother says, because I said so. And Jim is absolutely right that they were adamant about returning it to that. I think a lot of it had to do with traffic flow. I think that the change to cashless tolling and the removal of the real pinch point at the toll materially minimizes the need for 3 lanes. And it might be that state DOT will find that compelling if we ask them. And the only way that we're going to know that is if we ask them. The last thing is, this is actually really timely. I don't think it's up to us as a board to solve this problem, but I think it is appropriate for us as a board to say to these 2 agencies, here is our problem. Here is an idea that we think is a good one. We'd like you to take a look at it. And if all of the assumptions on which this idea is premised prove to be true, we would like you to do this. And if there's a reason why you can't do this, we would like you to come up with perhaps something else. I think that's totally within our purview, and I would strongly encourage this committee to send that kind of resolution to the full board. I say this as a driver and as an occasional cyclist and as a pedestrian who uses this walkway all the time. Oh, 2 other very short things. The Lighthouse Link is, as Steve mentioned in the chat, a huge priority for the Parks Department. They would love to be able to do this capital project, but I think the latest estimates are, it's something insane, like, tens of millions of dollars, $60 million, something like that. And the Parks Department would love to do it, but unless somebody funds it, they can't do it. And the last thing is the Amtrak bridge. There was always the question of like the swinging Amtrak bridge, which is at water level, which is different from that other bridge.
Yeah.
Right, and that's, we would love to see that, but that's never gonna happen.
That's never going to happen.
It's never gonna happen.
Never going to happen.
Right, but when somebody said Amtrak bridge and then showed the stairway over the Amtrak.
Yeah, I meant the stairway over. Yeah.
Those are 2 different things.
Yes.
Just one quick thing I just want to add to what Liz and Jim mentioned about the prior project when the retaining wall collapsed. The traffic counts have been falling on the Henry Hudson Bridge. This is showing 2006 in red versus 2016 in yellow. Again, this assumption may or may not have been continuing, but there has been decreasing traffic on this bridge since that time. And that may also help in a conversation with the state that the counts just aren't what they were at the time that the retaining wall project happened.
I mean, yeah, I'm not too worried about that shakes out. Like, even if you were off by 15%, the numbers would would sort of make the case. All right, I'm gonna go next to Maggie Clark, and then after Maggie, Dimitris Katumbas. And 2 minutes for these questions, please. And a minute for answers.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Well, I just wanted to mention, I mean, I'm certainly in favor of this, not only as a temporary pilot, but permanent. There's precedent for this recently where the Brooklyn Bridge and Queensboro Bridge have been giving lanes to bicyclists and pedestrians. So this is nothing new. DOT should be able to do this one, and especially considering I mean, my apartment looks at the northbound Henry Hudson, and and I have a great deal of experience with this, and it's empty a lot of the time. I want to mention also, though, about the potential for economic development if you were to have this kind of easy capability for people to get from the bridge up to the Bronx. When the Henry Hudson Greenway was completed, and it ends right 1 block away from where I live, and I'm a cyclist and lead rides for 2 clubs. When within a week of that completion, the area was flooded with bicyclists. And I had to ask somebody what happened, and they mentioned, oh, this was completed. This is what happens. And, there's great potential for economic development, which I think everybody would want. Third thing, back in 2006, NMTIC, New York Metropolitan Transportation Commission, I think is what it stands for. They started, they hired consultants. I actually was trying to become one of the sub-consultants. And their whole purpose there was to develop a plan to go from Dyckman Street to Yonkers. And so you might want to look that up, because there is a plan for that. It's a greenway plan to be as close to the water as possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Maggie, as always. Demetrius, and then Raul will come back to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dimitri. I'm a resident of the district. I just want to thank David Tom for this really comprehensive presentation. As many of you know, like everybody, a lot of people depend on the Greenway, not only for transportation, but recreation. The district doesn't really have a lot of safe bike routes or good access to the Greenway in terms of like heading south. Anyway, so I feel like they're really taking a very valuable link, not only for the district, but a link between the Bronx and Manhattan. I feel like the community board can take a stance and pass a resolution reiterating all the marks Elizabeth Lizzie has said, and officially like tell New York State DOT that we are basically concerned about this issue. And I feel like a lot of members of the community will be affected for the community board to take an official stance and call for the state to at least see what it could do. Thank you.
Raul?
Hello, everyone. I was just made aware today of how to attend these meetings. Otherwise, I would have made my questions known earlier. My main question is about the city bike station. My main question is about the city bike station that is planned for 190th and Fort Washington on the eastern side of Fort Washington Avenue. I'm wondering why we need 3 city bike stations so close together when we already have one in front of Bennett Park right across from the subway station.
That's not the topic of discussion today.
Well, I basically had a question. I wasn't aware that there was a city, this was already discussed in past meetings.
It would,
Can we conclude
yeah.
this discussion and that would be, I mean, that's.
Yeah,
that's great,
and then, I'll take it up as, in old business, because it's a good point. That stuff is starting to roll out, right now. So, and then if need be, we'll give you some contact information, Raul, to get an email to us with it. But let's just conclude on this, on the topic of the Henry Hudson, Alt Greenway connector. And let me just make sure that we don't have any other commentary. So I would say my resistance, and I guess part of my reason I'm a little knee-jerk about saying like our connection is to the city is because I actually don't feel like we should be getting involved in things that go to to legislative matters because I don't feel anybody elected us, but I think everybody's made excellent points about there's no reason why we can't point this to both relevant parties in this instance, because it absolutely does fall under the purview of this committee. And certainly this committee with MTA in our life and Port Authority, we're used to some things that aren't exactly New York City agencies. So with that, I guess I would like to make.
Debbie, if I could
Yeah.
correct you with a little history, way back when, and this was like 20 years ago, if not longer, New York State DOT, which I believe, and Lyle, indicated this is all very messy, actually owns the roadbed. They wanted to straighten out the northbound lanes of the Henry Hudson Parkway with 3 really outrageous plans and one that was slightly less crazy. And they actually came before the community board. And we actually, even though they were a state agency, we did get to pass a resolution. Now, you're absolutely correct. We have a very strong say, according to the city charter, as to what goes on in New York City and its departments. And we have much less of a say in what goes on elsewhere. And in fact, decreeing that what should happen in Russia, which I think we did many years ago, that really didn't serve much of a purpose. But New York State is much closer than Russia. So I think, there's this definite precedent that we have spoken to them and,
Right.
Officially. Thank you.
Yes. So with that, once again, I would like to thank Dave, Tom, and anytime you attack an issue, it's always with such detail and clarity, and I appreciate you putting your brain on this and taking the time out to come talk to us about it. With that, I would like to make a motion for a resolution to ask city and state DOTs to look at this proposal, do any necessary studies of vehicular volume, etc. I would propose to put this in a context of the broken connections really in the Empire Trail that exist in this area, and certainly between the Bronx and Manhattan, and how this is an opportunity for the Empire State Trail. And I would like to also, include the opportunity to do a pilot during the time when the existing greenway is closed. Yeah, I think that's all the elements. So that's what I am proposing,
could
and
I
that's my motion.
Make one very small suggestion that it's true that it's appropriate for DOT to take a look at the capacity, but I think they know pretty well what the traffic capacity is. And I don't think they need to study it because they just did that in the course of doing the cashless tolling. So I wouldn't
All
want
right,
to call
don't
on
worry
them to
about,
do a
Liz, don't
study.
worry about the wordsmithing. Like, I'll
Okay.
do it so it makes sense. I'm not gonna have a study for the sake of, I'm just saying, like, just to Jim's
Evaluate.
point of they don't have to take Dave's analysis of the vehicular. They can plug in their own. That's it.
However, in fact, au contraire, basically,
Me or her?
yeah.
I'm kidding.
The traffic study, if there was one for the electronic tollings, that was not done by state DOT. It was probably done by the people who run the bridge. But the issue is we always need studies and we always need real data. And the very essence of what we're asking is for them not to decide whether they want it or not. That's not what we want to ask them because they're probably going to say no. We want them to determine whether this is feasible or not. Then we can discuss it. Now, if they do studies or based upon studies they have already done, if they have sufficient data, they might be able to say, oh, this is highly feasible or this is not feasible at all. And from then we can proceed. But I think the main thing we should be pointing at is having them study this matter so we can see whether it's feasible. Because it's obviously, if the lanes are not needed for vehicular traffic, then by all means, we should make other uses of them. But if they are, that's another story. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, the fact that a highway is empty a lot of the time, that doesn't mean anything. It's how full it is when it's crowded. And that's the real determination. And again, that's something that has to be measured. Thank you.
You're right, Jim. That, I didn't mention that the bridge is owned by MTA, so that's a third agency involved here. Although at least for the initial proposal, which is the detour required to address the retaining wall repair, you wouldn't have to necessarily involve MTA because you're not at the bridge at that point. But you're right, you may have to include MTA in the resolution too.
I mean, I guess I would say, because I'm reluctant to do, I don't really, I prefer it's not a resolution that's just about feasibility. So maybe we split the baby as follows, which is it's a resolution to the entire distance, but to put a recommendation to pilot this area. And I think it would be defined as it's roughly 180th Street, but I think you would need to start it just north of that authorized vehicle turnaround, which I know for a fact some particular drivers and car owners on this call may sometimes use for personal, to go around from northbound, hook around to the southbound. But you'd have to be just north because authorized vehicles and construction vehicles and law enforcement are still using that turnaround. And so if you had bikes there, you'd have a conflict that's going to lead to injured people. So basically it's roughly 180th where you're just north of that turnaround and then going to Dykeman, so that we could kind of have it both ways, both the sort of studying the larger concept as a Bronx Manhattan connector, et cetera, with the idea of the pilot, which I don't think we need to go down this big feasibility thing because it's Jersey barriers and it's a mile.
Well, again, if you do it wrong, you're going to back up traffic and Mayor de Blasio will look yet worse. Basically, they do have to do the studies and they will do the studies, and we can tell them not to do the studies and they will look at us strangely and then do what they're required to do. But again, we should advocate for this thing, but inherent in the whole piece is they first have to see, or at some point they have to see whether it's feasible or not. If it's not feasible, we can suggest and wax eloquent as all, they're not going to do it because they can't do it.
So would it be better for the committee, because I'm not sort of hearing a formal second, would it be better for me to come back next month with a drafted reso?
No,
and then
time is really of the essence on this because the construction is going to be starting soon. So
I thought that was a delayed start that actually
it
wasn't starting.
It is a delayed start. It was originally supposed to start in the summer, and now it's not going to start until the fall. But warning, dates on calendar are closer than they appear. City bureaucracy moves slowly. So I'm not on your committee, so I can't second this, but
I second it.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Just simply looking into the issue, that's basically it.
Right. All right. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to take a roll call. We're going to go in reverse order this time. Richard Allman.
Yes.
Okay. Bruce Robertson.
Yes.
Gerard Dingle. Gerard, did we?
I don't see him, I don't think.
Ooh. Ooh.
I think he left.
Oh. Sorry, one sec.
That's just again from going backwards. Now you're confused.
That's what I get. Yeah, it's all going wrong. Jim Berlin.
Yes.
Jay Mazer.
Yes.
Leo Jimenez. Leo may have needed to step on another call, so I might need to, I'll come
He's
back to
also
him.
muted, yeah, but
Yeah.
he's still
No,
there.
he was gonna have to sort of
Oh, I
listen in
see,
on.
right,
Yeah,
right,
he was,
right. Well,
yeah.
he can always tell us later. Sure, you
Mary
know.
Anderson
Yes.
and Robin Cruz.
Yes.
Thanks, Robin. Leo, do we have you back yet? Okay, no problem. And me, yes. Thanks all, and I will
Do
just
I
hit
get to
people
vote
up
on that?
if I have any questions for the drafting. Sure, Liz.
I vote yes, and I would also, if you can just reference that this is something that did a lap through the Parks Committee apropos of the initial Parks project, because I think agencies take a better view when they recognize that different aspects of the board are collaborating and that we recognize that there's an interagency component to this.
Yes. Do I have? All right, I don't have Steve. Okay. And just, I'm gonna run through attendees. Do not feel like you have to vote, but if you want to, Maggie, do you want to indicate support or not?
Yes.
Raul
Yes.
and Dimitri.
Yeah.
Great.
And David?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Dave. Okay, great. All right. Thank you, everybody, on that. I will circulate something for people to take a look at, make sure I've captured everything. We just some, since I didn't do updates at first, I think we still have Jody Harrison on amongst the attendees today. Jody had brought us that information on the, I guess, the upper roadway of Riverside Drive, north of 158th Street, which is so narrow. So they're facing just a lot of issues. I sent people the pictures, etc. Lyle, I didn't hear back from you guys. This came up at our last meeting. Is this familiar to you from your end? Are you aware of it? And you guys were gonna just sort of take a look at the material that Jody forwarded?
Can you just refresh my memory just in case? I just want to make sure.
So this was, again, so, you know, like the 3 Riverside Drives roughly. So that really narrow one, so I guess it's called the upper drive, that sort of going north from 158th Street and then sort of coming out roughly kind of by 165 in the hospital. And it's very narrow. So there's like terrible sidewalk conditions. There's like obviously one truck like blocks the whole thing. There's a lot of sort of crossings that aren't marked, and you know, it's and then you've got the park on the other side. So they've sent, there are probably 30 pictures of the various conditions. And at the last meeting when it came up, you guys, you know, just said you would take a look, needed to absorb all of it. And so I just wanted to say, I know I didn't talk to you over the past week or two, but do you know anything about whether people have had a chance to take a look at that?
I haven't heard anything from my end as far as updates, but I can check in to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If anything, from my recall, I think it's going to be a couple divisions within DOT that have to take a look based on the scope of the work. So information might be piecemeal coming in as far as what we could and couldn't do. But I can check in with my colleagues to see what's going on and report back when I have some updates. But yeah, we might have to break this down a little bit as far as different divisions within DOT.
All right, thanks, Lyle. I appreciate it. And I've told Jody, and I'll say the same thing to you, Lyle. It's like, I told Jody not to be shy about checking in and seeing where things are at. And as you have information, please feed it back. Bruce?
I concur with Jody's proposal, because I live there. So whatever testimony you want me to make, I'll support her efforts, which I have from the beginning. And having gone through what we've gone through, I've cautioned her to be careful dealing with DOT. And that's my disclosure, my disclaimer to her. So she understands what she's getting into. I
All
think,
right.
I think.
Sort of, but that's a good segue to the next item, Bruce, which is that, so Bruce, as people know, was really helpful through the whole period since the implementation of some safety fixes on Riverside Drive went into place, was that November? And Bruce has sort of been a point person, not only because he sits on this committee and then, but he's also connected to all the sort of impacted, residents of that area. And one big thing, as people remember, was that there needed to be put in a loading zone in front of the Grinnell, because you were ending up getting like blocking Riverside going all the way down to the highway at times, or just blocking it sort of unnecessarily if somebody unloading. So there's a short loading zone that was put in place, and now it's every day, but it's only like, forgive me, Bruce, is it like 7 till 8 right now, or is it 8 till 7?
7 to 7.
7 to 7.
And
And so
we want 24 hours.
So that step of just defining like the hours for the sign, DOT needed to come to Eli and myself to have one of us sort of put in writing, like, put this out. And there has been discussion and sort of a recommendation from residents around there who have been watching this sort of settle in, that some have voiced the idea or the need to move it to be 24/7, which I could just send an email and make happen, because again, it's sort of in the context of a resolution that we already made, and et cetera, et cetera. So it just needed me to put something in writing. But I have to say, going to the 24/7, I did want to just, and I don't know the right procedure, and Jim, maybe you can help me out here, is I just wanted to sort of say it in front of the committee before I did it. Again, I sort of have deferred to Bruce's judgment, because again, he's been boiling up the feedback coming in from the community, many of whom have a direct connection also to DOT, so they're communicating it directly into DOT. But DOT isn't going to do anything unless, like, I sort of say, yeah, could we change the signage? So just before I did that, I just kind of wanted to run it by the committee. And Jim, I know you're looking at me quizzically, like, what the hell are you doing? But
I think you're the reality, but by being so forthright and so conscientious, you're being very helpful to the process. Although you and Eli may have the ability to say to DOT, make it 24 hours instead of 12 hours. In reality, this community board is the one that has to decide what it wants to do. And so, this should be brought to the committee. And the other thing which confuses me is that if this is a loading zone, what kind of loading is going on at 4 a.m? If it's a loading zone, presumably it's supposed to be for a loading zone. Now, if it serves some other purpose, like it should be no standing 24 hours, that's a whole other story. But, the fact that you and Eli can do this is inherently very problematical. And so I believe you're absolutely correct in bringing it to us as a committee. And then maybe even if there's, this is something even the community board should decide on, because again, it is the board that, although the chair can appoint lots and lots of people and chairs and stuff, it is the board itself, and this is very clear in our bylaws and the city charter and everywhere, it's the board itself that actually makes these determinations. So technically you should come to us and we will go, yes, you can now use your power in this way because this is what we, the board, have chosen to do. That's
Right.
the
I
reality.
mean, I guess how listening to you and sort of how I want to think about it is that, you know, I think it's
Bruce's hand is up
perceived
also.
like we approved the plan. It was winnowing that section of Riverside down to 1 lane rather than 2. There was this median. The median was like a smidge bigger than everybody thought it was going to be. And so we took all that to get.
Not a smidge.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, but to sort of the facts on the ground is like different than when you look at a picture, and it became very apparent, like, wait a minute, like we're going to cause a lot of problems. And so I understand that sort of in that context of saying, oh, this thing that the community board already acted on, that's sort of part and parcel of the implementation, which one could view as having been incomplete and needed to be finished in this way. And I guess if I'm being asked to put something in writing, you know, whatever we think about who should have input or whatever, I am asking you, my committee, knowing again that Bruce has been the closest to it, has come out that 24/7 would be advisable. If anybody has some thoughts, I mean, I guess my only hesitancy as I've sat down to draft an email has been, you know, overnight parking like is really helpful to people. And I know that like in school loading zones that start at 7 a.m., there are plenty of people that have work and reason where they happily park there and they're happy to have their cars out by 7 a.m.
See, the question I think is what is the rationale for this? You know, because overnight, and I think we should listen to Bruce. And the other thing I want to add.
Let's just let Bruce.
Well, no, let me just set the stage, and then if you don't mind, Bruce. So the reason we want to set the stage is basically this committee, if you're asking us, can tell you one of 3 things. We can say, do it, don't do it, or the sort of wishy-washy, which Bruce and his neighbors would like, which may be perfectly fine. Do what the neighbors want for now, and we'll see how it works. Now, that would sort of be my opinion, but again, the fact that you and Eli can do this doesn't mean in the bigger picture, you have a right to speak for us in ways, if this board, wants parking for whatever reason as a policy, then, we may not want this for 24 hours since it seems to limit parking. Sorry, Bruce, thanks a lot.
Couple of facts. One is I'm not the only one who's representing the community. Wayne Benjamin, who is the chair of land use, who lives in the Grinnell, also shares my feelings and has expressed them to Deborah and others. Number 2,
Yes.
Vivian Ducat, who's on the land use committee as a whatever you call it.
Public
member.
Thank you. 790 was part of a community group of about 20 people that started several years ago with Lyle Blackwood and Lyle's group, and met with Assemblyman Al Taylor and Robert Jackson and others to kind of put this whole thing together. But net, the Grinnell are the ones that are kind of been griping the most because that's where a bottleneck is. It's not a loading zone, Jim. It's a no standing zone that we want to extend because it happens that after 7 o'clock, people come and park. So somebody comes in at 8 o'clock and they can't unload because they have a car. They're not unloading, Fresh Direct, or unloading their baggage from maybe being out of town or whatever. So we're requesting a 24-hour. Could it be 20 hours? It just happens. It has to go beyond the 7 o'clock p.m. time.
Okay, but there's midnight, there's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Not too many people come back from the country at 3,
Right,
I mean,
you're
you might.
exactly right. So I didn't realize that there are interim hours that could be done.
One would hope,
None,
otherwise
but-
they're crazy.
But there are also violators, and we've been trying to traffic them. I've talked to the captain at the 33rd precinct who said, call me if you find somebody. Well, once in a while, we get a doctor or a cop or somebody who parks there. We don't call the cops on the cops or the doctors, it just so happens, or the fire department. So, we've been dealing with this, and we appreciate what Deborah has done. She's gone to the mat for us, and other people on the committee have gone to the mat for us. We're dealing with it, and as some people say, 2 years from now, nobody will know the difference. Well, the old timers are used to a wide avenue. Now we have a median where there are 8 cars parked opposite the building. And then on the other side of the street, there are more cars parked. So it's kind of congested, but it does slow down the traffic. So it has worked to a large extent, but we're dealing with community pushback. And again, I thank the committee. I don't want to belabor this whole thing, but I think an extended beyond 7 o'clock at night would really help. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am disposed to certainly to extending it, and I hear that, and I think that, you know, the voices again that have gone directly into DOT, it's not necessarily being mediated by us, you know, have been pretty consistent on that point. I mean, I guess I would sort of propose maybe 11 to 7. But I'm open.
Or maybe
to
midnight. I mean,
midnight
they
to
may have a
7.
sign like that already. That may be one of their standard thingies.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
What's wrong with 24/7, Jim?
Because during the hours when it's not no standing, people who have these strange jobs can actually park for that period of time. And parking, you know, for the people who own.
Jim, they will park anyway. So they will park anyway.
Well, no, the fact that they will park anyway is irrelevant. We do not run ourselves because people don't follow the law. The point is, if there's no reason for them not to park from 2 a.m. till 4 a.m. or from midnight until 7, then let them park. That way they're not violating the law. We're letting them do what we're letting them do. They're actually doing what we want. Now we're wanting what they want to do, but it's a whole different story. Thank you.
I defer to the committee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I basically want it match if there's really, you know, look, a good part of New York City, we're a city. I live on a street like this, like there's no egress for a lot of blocks and sometimes it's shut down. An oil delivery, 2 trucks that can't get around each other, an ambulance, like it's part of life. And yes, on Riverside Drive, you never had to deal with it because it was wide. So I'm not looking to protect against every single instance where streets are blocked all the time. My street is blocked every day at some point. But at the same time, I'd like to have a balance, or I always am trying to balance, like, you know, overnight parking for some people is really like an issue. And if we don't have to, if there's really not that much of a risk between 12 and 7 of there being an issue. I'm not trying to get to 0 issues, but I am trying to head off the bulk of them that were sort of brought about by going to 1 lane and having a huge building with a lot of, you know, ins and outs, you know, right there at like the sort of foot of it. So, I mean, I guess it sounds like nobody else has anything to say. This was a helpful dialogue, but I guess that's where I'm coming out. And I do, this is what I wanted to hear. Like, I wanted to hear you guys like hash it out a little bit because
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just keep in mind emergency vehicles and so forth, but whatever the committee decides, I'll do my best to defend it.
Okay.
Well, and then if it doesn't work, we'll keep our eyes on it, and then hocus pocus, it's an emergency. They got to put it back to the way it was, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So I see there were a few people that were attendees that had sort of other matters. I guess, Chanel, can you drop into the Q&A an email address so people want to get to me, like who could they email you and you'll get stuff to me? But I see, just if people will give me just 5 more minutes, I just want to call on Layla. I know you've been sitting with a question could you just, Layla, are you able to just tell us what that
Yeah.
was, and then we can get you an email address if need be?
Yes, please. Hi, good night. Reaching out to you guys. I live on 204th Street and 9th Avenue, between 9th and 10th Avenue. So I don't know if you're familiar with this side of Manhattan, right by Inwood Diamond. So we're like the leftover, I will say, of Manhattan. We have been having some issues on these streets because, you know, I don't know if you know, there's so many clubs that they open like in the last 4 years, 5 years. There's so many restaurants. And on 9th Avenue, there are 2 streets that are dead ends, 202nd Street and 203rd Street. Those streets are supposed to be the entrance to the parks. I don't know if you know there's a waterfront parks over there. And those streets are supposed to be only for that. But we are having so many issues regarding meetups and parties on the streets because they are dead ends and supposed to be no cars parking there. So they are becoming like a gathering place for, you know, because right now the clubs are closed and all that. And so many racing on 9th Avenue, and there are also so many because of these parties, and there's so much traffic. So my petition for the community board is to I wanted to start a petition to close those streets.
So, Layla, this might be an issue of one, drag racing on 9th Avenue. We have heard that one. And this sort of gathering, like outdoor gathering in the overnight, etc., is really more of a in public safety side. And you know,
Deborah, I'm so
yeah.
sorry. I'm here with my wife Layla, and I just want to like clarify. Like we brought this up to NYPD, and you know we're trying to find other solutions. It is a dead end. No car should be standing there.
Agreed.
So the thing
No,
is,
I
like,
understand that. I understand that, Dimitri. So I guess, you know, this issues of sort of these issues they've been coming up sort of in volume for the past year. There is no easy answer. I would say there's not really like just closing streets is not really like a tool that I think people are open, like it's sort of, there's an enforcement issue, there's a public safety issue, there's a, you know, during pandemic, there were just no easy answers, like, right? Places were closed, people were going crazy. There's no easy answer at any of this. But the idea that, you know, and people often are coming to DOT and to the street side and to us to sort of solve what's not something we can really use the streets for. However, you know, it's something that certainly the chair of public safety, Curtis Young, and I have talked about, of like how often we're seeing stuff like this that are sort of for better, for worse, sort of enforcement issues, but they do have the streets component. So we're hearing about them as well. So I guess maybe what I would do is
if I could reinforce what you're saying, because this has happened time and again. People, when they're frustrated with the lack of enforcement, then they turn to, well, maybe we can restructure the infrastructure. So for example, there were people who wanted a median built down the middle of the western part of Dyckman Street, and so on and so forth. But again, the real issue is a matter of enforcement. Originally, these mini parks that are now gathering places, you know, for noisy people, were seen as a great amenity because this was just disgusting shoreline, you know, with rats and whatever. And now people can go there. The fact that too many people go there, well, that becomes,
I'm
you
sorry
know,
to interrupt. I agree with you. The thing is that these are
except that you interrupted, which you may not do.
Yeah, sorry, we can't.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the committee
as I
can have a
was saying,
discussion. We unfortunately can't do that.
There is this tendency to, you know, turn to infrastructure when that's not the way of doing it. So I just wanted to put that caveat out. And these parks, these mini parks at the end of the road were put in at great expense, and probably most of the time, you know, they're enjoyed by people quite properly. And if people are not behaving properly, you don't build a wall, you have some enforcement, you know, and it may be difficult or whatever. But and again, I've seen this over and over again. So, you know, this is, you know, that's my view. Thank you, Debbie.
So it's just a quick follow. We agree with you. Like the parks are great. Like we don't care people. It's just the car meets. Like they create traffic on 9th Avenue as it's coming from the East River. That traffic heading to the 207 bridge. There's a lot of car meets on these small dead ends that create additional traffic, especially during peak hours in the evening.
And all of that is enforcement, and that has to. We have a committee on public safety, and that's who you talk to about that. We're not going to change the streets. I'm sure of that.
And I will touch base with Curtis, because again, I have heard in other venues of the issues on 9th Avenue in that area, and sort of, but this is like the first time I've also gotten some feedback on the low 200s as opposed to like 206, et cetera. So duly noted, and I will get that information over to Curtis as well. And I know you've tried to follow up with traffic enforcement. Okay. Okay, and Raul, I'm gonna pick up your email off the Q&A, and we'll contact you about the city bike stations. And with that, I'd love a motion to adjourn.
Oh, Debbie, sorry. One quick thing before I let you guys go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you guys an update on something that's happening up on Dyckman Street, just real quick. Ideally, just so that you and the committee are aware, DOT is looking to collect community feedback in regards to a potential plaza being proposed on Dyckman Street, ideally in the open street area between Broadway and Seaman Avenue. Dyckman Garden, who's the maintenance entity overseeing the Dyckman open street in that area, has applied to be a part of the plaza program. So that location is in the process of being accepted. Currently, the plan starting today is for DOT to conduct community outreach to get some feedback from residents as to their thoughts on the proposed space, any ideas as far as future activities for the proposed space, and just general overall feedback. So starting today, actually, like I said, we're going about the process of getting that outreach taken care of. We have flyers on Dyckman currently advising of where to reach out to. I think there's a website that's set up. I don't have the link, unfortunately, right now, but I'll try to get that for you guys, ideally, hopefully sometime tomorrow to follow up. But there's going to be some on-street outreach being done along Dyckman at some point, along with a website, like a web portal, where you can give feedback. There should be a workshop that our public space division within DOT is going to host sometime in the near future, which we will, let you know about, to gather some more community feedback as to the proposal. We also do plan on coming back to the community board at some point to have a formal proposal to talk to you more about it. Ideally, the plan as of now, if all goes well, is to move forward with the plaza in that space, ideally sometime in the fall. Like I said, we're going to come back to the community board, ideally before the summer is the plan. I think we're aiming for the June meeting to have a conversation with the committee about this in more detail. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up, since the portal is open today and the outreach begins today. If you had any comments, any thoughts as far as what can be done with that proposed space, if you want that space at all, we're just looking to get feedback from the CB, from residents, just to get your thoughts. So like I said, I'll try to see if I can get a link for you in the meantime. I just wanted to put that out there for you, just so that you're aware, so the community outreach portion of the proposal.
So this is a plaza like the Haven Plaza? that kind of plaza?
Yeah, more or less. Like it would be on the street, so it would be that block between Seaman and Broadway on Dykeman, ideally. So
And it would be closed to traffic.
yes, so that space, would be used for cultural events, recreational events. Granted, when everything is up and running and hopefully back to normal. But a proposal was submitted to DOT in order to consider this location as a proposed plaza site. So I just wanted to let the community know, and hopefully the community board, just to get the word out. And we'll be in contact as far as giving you more information as far as outreach, just so that you guys can weigh in on the subject in the meantime, before we come to the community board, ideally in June.
Thank you, Lyle. Oh, and by the way, Lyle, the other thing would be that the implementation of the changes on 178th Street that this board resoed on last year.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, implementation has started or is about to start. What's the time?
Yeah, it's about to start. There is, the pandemic's kind of thrown everything kind of whack for us as far as delays. And when we had originally tried to move forward, ideally the plan was to do this during the summer of last year, but we all know what's happened in the past year. We should be moving forward with that project. I want to say in the next few weeks. I know sometime during the spring. So more than likely, probably in the next few weeks, we'll get the ball rolling. The flyers have been distributed. My apologies for not giving it to you directly, Debbie. I'm sorry about it. They give it to the community board. My apologies for not giving it to you directly. That will be rectified next time. I normally do give it to you. Sorry about that. I was lapse in judgment on my call. But work should be starting relatively soon in that area, and we'll do what we can for the time being as far as making the area safe, and then we'll get to the concrete portions when we can. But I just wanted to let you know, yeah, we are going to move forward with that project sometime in the near future. Ideally, probably sometime this month, I'd say.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lyle. Thanks for sticking with us tonight, and for being here. And
Motion to close.
Debbie, can I just mention one more thing regarding Dykeman?
no, I think we're gonna call it for the night, but it's gonna come back to us, I promise, and I hope you will too. And thank you, Lila, for joining us as well.
Need a second.
All right, we
I
are.
second the motion to adjourn unless that was already done.
I think it was already done, but
Even
9:06.
better.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for tonight.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks.
And thanks, Chanel.